the Africa Climate Summit highlighted something extremely important. One, the power of leadership, and that Africa is ready to lead globally. One, the leadership of a host country under President Ruto, and as president of the Committee of Heads of State and Government of the African Union, but most importantly, the leadership of his peers, heads of state and government and ministers, standing with him and really propelling Africa forward as a very powerful global leader on the all-important topic of climate, which is not just an environmental issue now. It deals with trade. We talked about the issue of how trade is impacting our ability to deal with the challenges climate brings, because countries that are already struggling servicing debt also have to deal with the impacts of climate change. Please note that 33 of Africa's countries are LDCs, and they're also struggling with climate change. So I think that was a very important message. And I think the other important message that I would like to highlight is the number of issues that are really key to Africa. The emphasis on loss and damage. The loss and damage fund establishment was a hard-fought battle that was won by African negotiators, guided by their African ministers of environment under AMSEN, and strongly endorsed by our heads of state and government. And the summit came out very strongly to pronounce itself and say, this must be operationalized when we go to COP28. It is the vision and commitment of our leaders. Of course, the other remained adaptation, which is critical to Africa. And these also came out very strongly. The last one I would like to mention is in relation to critical minerals and the energy transition in Africa. These are providing two opportunities for Africa, that we will not only be the source of these minerals to power and light other parts of the world, but that we will also benefit in using these minerals in the cycle to light and power Africa, but two, to also get a good deal out of them, even as we export, including leading to the establishment of industries and building Africa's industrial base based on these minerals. And I think the partnership between the government of Zambia and the DRC on a battery factory out of these critical minerals is a very good example that our leaders are leading from the top, and they are walking the talk about what they intend to do with these critical minerals. It's very important, and one of the areas that Africa is leading the world on in almost every area now is consensus and speaking with one voice. What the summit has done is concretize Africa's vision as provided by our leaders, but also voice on all the critical areas for the summit. The next steps is that Africa is going to show up in numbers, just as they did for the summit, and they are going to speak with one voice. And it is going to be a very loud voice, because our heads of state and government represent at least 1.4 billion people on the ground. And then after that summit, our heads of state and government and the people of Africa are going to go to COP28 in Dubai, and we are going to carry that voice through. So they are very important next steps, but that is just in terms of events. What those events exemplify is action. Action and commitments that have started here in Nairobi. The $25 billion committed Africa intends to collect. Our leaders have made it a point. The $100 billion that were committed, Africa intends to collect. Our heads and states, our heads of government, clearly mentioned that this is a commitment that really must be met. But beyond that, the role of the private sector, bringing in the innovation and technology that we need in energy and agriculture and other areas, but also bringing in the hard cash that allows us to industrialize and grow. So there's a lot of follow-up action across the board that is going to come as part of these processes, starting with the climate summit, all the way to the Secretary General's Summit, and then to COP28. As a founding member of NAWE, the Network of African Women Environmentalists, I want first to acknowledge 2 women out of this summit. There were very many women who played an important role in the summit. I just want to point out 2 Kenyan women, because it was a host government for the summit. One, Honorable Said Pantia, the Cabinet Secretary for Environment, was a woman who led a powerful event for her government, but most importantly for Africa. I think the world needs to know that and acknowledge that, women leading from the top. 2, the First Lady of the Republic of Kenya, Mama Rachel Ruto, as she is fondly referred to in this country. I do not remember ever anywhere in the world in such a collection, a summit of 20 or 30,000 people, where a First Lady led the kind of pavilion and conversations that happened at the First Lady's Pavilion, from energy transition, women empowerment in agriculture, and across all fields. So women led from the top at this summit. And as a founding member of this network, this is exactly what we wanted to do, to show that women can and will lead in these discussions, and that while we suffer the brunt of climate change and land degradation and desertification, we are agents and we are part of this change. And I think the women of Kenya have demonstrated that leadership very well.